From advertising to software as a service to data.
Across all of our programs and clients, we've seen a 55 to 65% open rate.
Getting brands authentically integrated into content performs better than TV advertising.
Typical lifespan of an article is about 24 to 36 hours.
If we're reaching out to the right person with the right message and a clear call to action, then it's just a matter of timing.
Welcome to the MarTech Podcast, a Ben J. Schaap LLC production. In this podcast, you'll hear the stories of world-class marketers that use technology to drive business results and achieve career success. We'll unearth the real-world experiences of some of the brightest minds in the marketing and technology space so you can learn the tools, tips, and tricks they've learned along the way. Now here's the host of the MarTech Podcast, Benjamin Shapiro.
Welcome back to Crisis Marketing Week on the MarTech Podcast. This week, we're going to share the frameworks and marketing strategies that we're applying here on the MarTech Podcast to give you a guide to market through the impact of the coronavirus. Each day this week, we're going to publish an episode that walks you through the 5 steps that we've been taking to evaluate, triage, secure, pivot, and scale your business during this time of crisis. Joining me today is the man behind the scenes, my head of content production, Mr. Todd Hines. Todd, welcome back to Crisis Marketing Week on the MarTech Podcast.
Good to be here. Thanks, man.
Okay, here's the third installment of Crisis Marketing Week, where Todd and I discuss how we are setting and trying to execute on our short-term plans. So, Todd, the coronavirus outbreak happened. We got hit with the shelter-in-place order. We realized that we were going to have to modify what we were doing. First week I am back from paternity leave. My day got compressed in half, which means that we could record less content, and we needed to sit down and figure out how much cash we had on hand, how we could operate the business, and start trying to think about collecting our account receivables to basically take inventory of what we were doing. When we started sitting down and getting back to business and setting our short-term plans, what were some of the things that you remember about us just actually getting back to work?
Well, one of the things I'm most excited about, and we did talk about in the early days of getting used to this new environment we're living in, is the monetization aspect and how we plan on serving our partners and adding value to our sponsors, many of which are now faced with similar crises as we are. And one thing that Ben actually thought about earlier on was the opportunity as we watch all these local events and shows and various conferences being canceled. Many of these event marketers are not able to go to these events and doing these conferences. So how could we possibly serve them and figure out a partnership with them to advertise on podcasts?
Todd, yesterday you and I were on a walk talking about strategy and thinking about some of the businesses that were impacted and some of the ones that were going to benefit and some of the ones that were going to sink. And even in this time where, even if the global economy or the United States economy is struggling, there is a lifestyle change for a lot of people. And we had to think about what the new reality was. And the first thing that occurred to me was with the, let's call it the advent of social distancing, all of the events that are marketing events were canceled. And there was a lot of marketing budget that was sitting out there that just got either gobbled up, deleted, but some of it had to be reallocated. So what we did was we modified our normal sponsorship outreach. Normally we go to someone who is in a marketing event, because people that are sponsoring marketing events, they're generally pretty brand awareness forward. We're able to provide them with a sponsorship opportunity that not only has the awareness building tools because we sell advertorial content, but we're also able to give them better attribution and tracking. So when the event marketing budgets were all of a sudden tossed up in the air, we decided, hey, we were going to double down and start sending outreach to people that were sponsors of events that were canceled. So I'm going to read you the email that we sent as part of our 3-email sequence to people that were supposed to be sponsors of an event. Hi, blank. My name is Benjamin Shapiro, and I'm the host and producer of the MarTech Podcast. My show tells these stories of world-class marketers who use technology to generate growth and achieve business and career success. Since blank, your company, was unable to sponsor blank conference this year, I wanted to reach out to offer an alternative way for you to reach an engaged audience of marketers through podcast sponsorship. Here are a few quick stats about the MarTech Podcast. Top-ranking podcast for MarTech in iTunes with 200 plus 5-star reviews. Top 100 ranking marketing podcasts, see screenshot below. 57,000 plus monthly downloads, 20 plus thousand households reached monthly. As event marketing opportunities are canceled for the foreseeable future, our sponsorship platform provides access to a large community of marketers in an engaging and trackable medium. If you're the right person to talk to at blank company about potentially becoming one of our sponsors, I'd love to have a quick conversation to walk you through our sponsorship program. Please let me know if you're interested, and I'll suggest a few times for us to connect. Thanks in advance, Benjamin Shapiro. Moral of the story here is that we are not specifically trying to call out, hey, the world is ending, coronavirus is happening, oh my God, it's the zombie apocalypse, send us your money, right? We're not trying to be negative or take advantage of the situation, but in reality, we're also still operating a business. So, hey, there's a moral component to thinking about this. When you're thinking about how to monetize your business during this time of change, you need to think about what is appropriate. And for me, as businesses are still operating, events are obviously canceled. This felt like an appropriate way for us to try to pivot our monetization strategy and refocus who we're targeting on, because there are events that are going to be canceled, right? That budget still exists, and hopefully we can help absorb some of it while providing value to those businesses. Todd, let's talk about some of the other businesses that are potentially going to be impacted, to give our listeners some ways of thinking about who they could potentially pivot their target to.
Yeah, just off the top, the brick and mortar stores that we've seen, a lot of the local shops, obviously with the reduction of foot traffic and the social distancing, these shops can't rely on passersby. And so brick and mortar shifting online is a big one. Consumer goods, consumer home goods, home care, and then obviously the services that help with things like education. Kids are home from school. And on top of that, mental health. How are companies helping people maintain their wits about them, relax, and still find satisfaction in life while being homebound?
Yeah, I think there's a pretty dynamic shift in terms of the industries that are going to actually see growth. And a lot of them are going to be related to a change in the way that we buy and receive products. Also, what we're doing at home, the content that we're consuming, and also when we're going to be consuming it. You know, Netflix all of a sudden is going to be seeing big spikes in the middle of the day as opposed to the beginning and the end of the day. The other big one that sticks out to me is the concept of working at home and being a consultant, right? Everybody's working from home now. So the video services, the home office services, to me, the big companies that we rely on because we've been running this business as a home office for a while were video conferencing, chats, payment processing, invoicing, right? Everything that has to do with being a consultant. And also, you know, there's physical products. People are going to be buying more stuff to set up their offices. So providing some sort of goods there. These are just off the top of our head, some of the industries that Todd and I think are going to have opportunities to scale. So as we take a step back and talk about our short-term planning, the first thing that Todd and I did was sit down and say, okay, we need to be operators, right? We need to readjust our schedule, get back into recording content, and then start thinking about how we can replenish our pipeline. And thinking about the monetization for our podcast required some creativity and required us to think about our targeting and thinking about marketing in a different way. So for us, you know, short-term planning, we had to remember what our plan was. We had to go back and execute the fundamentals. I had to start recording content again, which I hadn't done in over a month, and work our way back into building routines. So some of the things that I think are important as we're going through this, just from a mental health perspective, is after a time of crisis, when you've gone through and you've triaged, you need to reestablish routines or rebuild them in some sense. Get dressed every day, go to work even if you're working at home. I've been working remotely for a few years now. Get up in the morning, get dressed, move your body. But then the systems that you had in place while you were in the office, they still exist, right? You just need to replicate them in a different environment. You also need to think about pacing yourself. This has been an incredibly stressful time for me. Todd, I'm assuming it has been for you.
Amen.
A little bit of stress. Too many Reddit boards, buddy. Close them.
Done.
It's a stressful time. You have to pace yourself. This is not a all-out sprint. And there have been times, you know, yesterday at 3:00, I was beat, tired, couldn't record any more content, just said, look, I got to go take a walk. And so during a time of crisis, when you're getting back into the routines and you're starting to deal with the new reality, you need to also get used to it. There are mental cycles that you're going to take just setting up your desk, just turning on the computer. And so be realistic about how much you can accomplish in a given day and just try not to burn out. So as you get back into the routine, you start to feel the value of that process. Things start to get a little easier mentally. and all of a sudden you're back into the operating rhythm. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about once you're back into the operating rhythm, how you can start to think more long-term again after you've gone through this short-term planning exercise in our next episode. So that wraps up this episode of Crisis Marketing Week on the MarTech podcast. Check back with us tomorrow when we're going to continue the conversation and talk a little bit about resetting your long-term planning in the wake of dealing with a crisis. Just one more link in our show notes that I'd like to tell you about. If you didn't have a chance to take notes while you were listening to this podcast, head over to martechpod.com where we have summaries of all of our episodes, contact information for our guests. You can subscribe to our once-a-week newsletter. You can even send us your topic suggestions or your marketing questions, which we'll answer live on our show. Of course, you could always reach out on social media. Our handle is MarTechPod, MarTechPod on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Or you can contact me directly. My handle is Ben J. Shap, BenJShap. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you want a daily stream of marketing and technology knowledge in your podcast feed, we're going to publish an episode every day this year. So hit the subscribe button in your podcast app and we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning. All right, that's it for today. But until next time, my advice is to just focus on keeping your customers happy.